Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it's also uploaded as a YouTube video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu. So today I'm with my co-host Teddy, and we're going to be talking about our initial thoughts into BT13 and what we're looking forward to in its release, as well as just some other general thoughts on the set, like going into pre-release and some of the translation issues. So before we jump into BT13, we do have a little bit of EX4 meta development to go over. So EX4 is obviously going to be a super short format, just because BT13 is literally on the horizon. Pre-release is next weekend, as of the recording of this podcast, and we only have like maybe a small handful of events that is actually going to be EX4. So one of the events in EX4 is the Latin American event, and we kind of already did our initial thoughts and predictions on where this meta is going to be headed in terms of what EX4 actually is, and it looks like a lot of our initial thoughts and opinions on the meta was kind of correct based on these results as of right now. Granted, this is only one event's worth of events, so there's not really a whole lot to go on, but without any more events to actually build upon, this format literally is just like a flash in the pan. So as far as the Latin American online regionals, there was 70 players in participation, 9 decks represented in top 16, which is pretty good, but just as we predicted, all of the top decks are the exact same top decks as what we saw in BT12. So
massive shock.
Yeah, massive shock. The only change is like Gaiomon, but Gaiomon is basically just red, black, Greymon deck. You're just literally changing the top end, and I believe the one Gaiomon player in their list, they literally were just using one copy of the brand new Gaiomon, and that was it. So it's not even, it was like that massive of a change.
It's not even a new deck. It's just one of the Gaio. But I like that they put it as the icon as the new Gaiomon, even though he only uses one copy of it.
Yeah, it's the red black Greymons has always kind of been in that awkward position where it is basically the same deck and you just change out your top end. The way I like to define it is you want to be hyper aggressive, play War Greymon. You want to be more mid range and have like a good balance of both, then play Gaiomon. Or if you just want to go pure control, then Black War Greymon. And then you could just obviously, depending on the tech and tools you want to incorporate, do a healthy mix of whatever you want, because they're all the same.
And they all, for the most part, have their own uses in certain scenarios, so it's kind of just a player preference thing, more so than anything in particular.
But, yeah, it is just a hardcore toolbox deck. But as far as the actual top 16, first place was Bloomlord. Obviously, nothing's changed. It just uses Quartzmon. Second place was Security Control. They are using Shadow Seraphimon. And I think that card just really helps push Security Control forward because they didn't really have like a good mega to just sit on. It used to be Venusmon because she was really annoying, but this is more annoying. So if anything, like Security Control is probably going to be doing or has been doing better than what we were expecting. But we'll see with Carta Magica. Yeah, we'll see with Carta Magica. Like a bigger picture when it comes to the EX4 meta as one of the last EX4 events. Then in third place we have Hunters, shocker. Fourth place is Hunters as well. Fifth place we have Beelzemon. Sixth Bloomlord. Seventh Blue Flare. Eighth Allforce. That's a little bit surprising, but not terribly surprising. It's still just a very solid deck. Then ninth,
it goes off.
Yeah. Then 9th, we have Blue Flare. 10th, we already said it's Gaiomon, but it's actually just more red, black, Greymon. 11th, Security Control. 12th, Security Control. 13th is Machine Dramon, 14th is Wanya, 15th is Hunters, and 16th is Ulforce. So as far as lists go, they're all basically almost the same. We already mentioned the only changes: security control using Shadow Seraphimon, and Gaiomon in Red, Black, Greymons is a card.
It's actually quite a bit of differences for the security control list. Not only this is Shadow Seraphi, but he's also using Black War Greymon and Megidramon in the deck list, with Wisemon as another level 5.
Yeah, because you could still use Hellscythe to get Wisemon out. The only problem is you literally can't use Wisemon's ability at all, because there's like literally nothing to hit. It's the inheritable of Blocker that matters. So you just Digivolve into Megidramon, mill them, and then you just have Blocker on a Megidramon.
Can trigger.
Yeah.
Wisemon adds a purple or black Digimon card, which is basically all of his top end.
Oh, is it? I thought it was a specific level or play cost.
Just add one purple or black Digimon card from among them to your hand, and then you place the rest at the top of your deck in any order. So basically, the idea is you slam it, look at the top few cards. Since you can reorder them, you can put them in whatever order you want, and then heal whichever card you want to heal.
I'm surprised they're not running like a Tech 1 of Gallantmon for the Megidramon. But there's not really a good Gallantmon to use.
Yeah, it's not in this kind of deck, at least. I think the Megidramon's just for the Beelzemon matchups.
Yeah, it's more for just the mill and an annoying blocker.
Yeah, that's really just about it. You really don't need it for anything else. Black Wars for the Tamer heavy deck, so I like this a lot.
Yeah, Digimon Emperor is a pretty good card. I know a lot of people have been like hyping it up or like slowly hyping it up, but I think in security control that's like the best application for the card.
Yeah, it prevents them from just rushing and chipping you like they normally want to.
Yeah,
with little guys.
Yeah, because Wisemon also could be used with Shadow Seraphimon because he's part black. So I don't hate the tech choice.
Every single level 6 can evolve over Wisemon, as well as the only one that can't. Yeah, literally, all his level 6 evolve over them, and then the only one that can't is Magna Angemon, but they don't really care because you just want them to slam for the recovery, and then if you have Shadow Seraphi, you just evolve over it.
Yeah, you just want the card in the grave for Hellscythe, which also again works with Wisemon.
Yeah, I like this a lot. It's pretty cool. Ingenuity at its finest. Even though I don't like this deck.
Yeah,
I think this is interesting at least.
And the interesting thing to note is there's 2 Blue Flare players. Blue Flare obviously did get a huge boost in EX4. But both Blue Flare players, they are not running the Kazuha or the Alter, or not Alter S. I was going to say the Kazuha or the Shout Cross 7 Superior package. So they are just strictly playing more aggro mid-range rather than combo control.
That makes sense. I mean, you really don't need it. It's just I like it, but you don't need it.
Yeah, so
Sorajos and
one is using like more trash the inheritable sources type of effects, and then they're just running Decker Greymon even without the Decker Dramon, just because he is just the better of the 2 armor purged level 5s that the deck has. Because like you get into certain situations where you need to stun their one big Digimon, because otherwise you have 0 answers to it. And Decker Greymon does that job nicely at stalling them out. Whereas Metal Greymon and Cyber Launcher, you can't do that. They get into a level 6, that thing is sticking on the field and it is not going anywhere.
The only thing I don't like about that is that you can't. This deck has the other version, the one that the other guy's playing without the Decker or without the.
Yeah, he's playing closer to what I run. Yeah,
he has 0 way to prevent the blockers from stopping him. Cannot get rid of any memory blockers. He can't get rid of any.
No, he's just going full punch factor.
He's just praying they never see a memory blocker or anything like that. Because he just auto loses if that happens.
He's playing something closer to what I was running.
Yeah, just the red package.
Yeah, just straight up use Greymon and Metal Greymon X just to try to deal as much damage. The Cyber Launcher counts as a Metal Greymon, so you could use it with Metal Greymon X if you really need to, just to have some like good defensive plays, and Cyber Launchers also for Floodgates, because otherwise, again, the deck really doesn't interact with the opponent's Digimon. If anything, it wants their Digimon to stay, so your cards can be more effective, but if they're a good player, you literally, sometimes the correct answer is passing rather than actually playing a secondary Digimon and giving them the ability to turn their effects online. Like, it is actually that laughable at times, where you still need the opponent to have 2 or more Digimon to be super effective.
I like that they're playing the Belucomon, though.
It's decent card draw. It's a security Digimon, so, like, if you don't see it in your hand and they hit it off of security, you have an easy access at a rookie. I like the Gaussmon. The Gaussmon, the new one, the fact that he can see himself is probably the most broken thing about that card, and like the only argument on like that I have with this deck. Otherwise, this is almost exactly what I'm running.
Yeah, I like this a lot. It just looks refined, blue flare, generic. Nothing really too crazy in the deck per se.
Yeah, and just to show it off, the fact that like literally they are just running one of the Gaiomon, like that's it. It is just your classic Greymon deck, just with one new Gaiomon. Just because like Black War Greymon already kind of wanted to be split between the old Gaiomon and Black War X, but still using Black War as the base. So like it's just a solid card to add in. The more interesting spice that I like seeing is win rate 60%. I always low-key like that card. And I think that card is like criminally underrated.
Yeah, I think that card is crazy cool. Like, it just requires a little bit of setup, but the setup isn't that hard. It's where it's that difficult to do it. So I don't know why it's not widely. I think it's just because it takes slots out of like a more impactful option. So it's like, would I use that over maybe something that could help me get rid of stuff? Probably not. So it's like, it's one of those like tech cards. If you got room for it, cool. If you don't, it's not really going to change how much your deck really performs. So I like it a lot, though. I think it's an interesting card to use.
Yeah, I was flipping through the All-Force list. There's 2 All-Forces. Where's the second All-Force? I was seeing if they are using the Armor Digimon or not. I'm shocked that they're actually not using the Armor Gold Veedramon. I think that card is fantastic for All-Force. Like, it's not meant for him, but I think he's a good card to use.
So he's using the starter deck Veedramon?
They both are. They're both opting to use the starter deck Veedramon over Gold. It's because the inheritable actually does something sometimes versus no inheritable and just having a better Digimon. I just like the idea on the fact that it has Armor Purge to be able to protect, and it adds some extra forms of disruption towards the opponent. So, it's interesting. I personally like Armor Gold Veedramon, but yeah, I guess I can't argue with results. The deck realistically doesn't need it, so I'm not going to fault anyone for not running it.
It's a tech choice, so it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Like, just literal flex spots. They don't need them, but I think the Gold Veedra is definitely more useful in more scenarios than Veedramon is, because you don't really care about the floodgates, because they don't really stop you per se in this deck.
No.
Not at the moment, at least.
I just like sometimes leaning towards using the new cards. The fact that it interacts with your tamers, you're still playing lots of VMons, means you can still Digivolve efficiently. So it is just a tech card. It's the fact that I like more so about the card is the fact that you could potentially stop one of the opponent's Digimon from attacking or blocking, so it can make certain lines of play easier, while also having access at some low body removal for free, so that way you could try to like use your other removals a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it helps you hit thresholds that allow you to remove things. I like it a lot.
Yeah, while still being a Vidramon, that was the important thing.
Exactly. Still keeping consistency,
So
which is massive for me at least.
yeah, so that is EX4. Shocker, nothing has changed as a good summary, and I highly doubt that anything super spicy or crazy is going to be coming out of Carta Magicas this weekend, which I am participating in. I don't know if you're participating in it or not.
I am not this time.
Okay, I mean I'm not faulting you. I'm not playing an Ultimate Cup, so you're the Ultimate Cup expert in my perspective when it comes to the two of us. So
BT13 is going to be very interesting for Ultimate Cup format, but we'll get
uh
there when we get there.
yeah, when we get there, it's going to be wild. But we got to get through constructed first, which is
Correct. The
where
more
I'm. Yeah, so
Same.
I'm definitely going to be playing a lot of the online constructed tournaments. Like I'm saying, or constructed, I mean competitive. Because in my head, I'm separating Ultimate Cup as a separate format than competitive True Digimon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on that same boat. I'm very excited to play uh, Digimon like constructed and a bunch of more in the format with this format at least specifically. 'Cause this is my jam right now. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So, getting excited about BT13. That's going to be coming up quite shortly. I know some of the earlier spoilers for the English side, even though we already literally knew every single card in the set. Some of the names did get altered, and some of the art also did get altered. Some people still kind of harp on Bandai for the censorship, but like when it comes to Digimon's translations, they've always been kind of whack and jank because sometimes they're going off of the dub name, sometimes they're going off of the sub name. There's strict rules, laws, and regulations that they have to follow when it comes to certain things. It's really weird and it's all inconsistent. My perspective is I don't think Bandai actually has a dedicated translation team for anything. Seekers has definitely proven that, where it's all just machine translated, so things kind of already read really weirdly, and then like we do get like, oh, why did they copy and paste the wrong text from the wrong card and put it on a different card? Like it just goes to show that like either an intern is doing it, that's like locked in the basement, or they just don't have anybody, and what they are doing is just super lazy. But the cards that like really got changed is Yggdrasil 76. The English title and English name of the card is King Drazel 76. And then the other one is Huckmon's art. The Japanese version had the Sistermons, and the English version is missing two of the Sistermons. So not only did they remove Noir, which was to be expected because we never had Noir, but they also took the extra time and effort to remove Blanc as well for whatever random reason. I think maybe like this is like really poor thinking, but maybe they were like drawn on the same layer and they just turned the layer off, which turned Blanc off. That it shouldn't be. It should be its own layer, but I don't know. I don't know why they had to take Blanc off. CL is already kind of silly just because we already know nuns with guns. It's a whole meme thing. It might not actually be for North American regulations. It could be for somebody else's. I could have swore I read somewhere, again, don't take this as fact, that it might have been because of Australia because they have stricter laws and regulations on guns than we do. So that could play in a factor on them being a global brand. So I'm not
I guess
sure.
that makes sense. It's just weird, but I mean that logically makes sense. Where they maybe just it's just an oversight. They were just doing the card. They wanted to take out Noir, and they just happened to be on the same level, or like you say, the same layer when they were doing the art, and they just said screw it, just take it all off, and they didn't feel like changing it. I doubt anything will come of this because I'm sure they're just gonna be like, it's just one card, who cares, or two cards in this case. But that's just a name more so than an art change, King Drazel. So it's not really.
I mean, it's like I said in my set review, like the set's name is versus Royal Knights, but we all know the actual theme of the set is Data Squad / Savers season 5 of the anime, and that was his English name. And
Yep.
that's it. That's the story. They just used the English name.
Yeah, so I don't. Kind of weird that they would. I mean, people are trying to argue that it's something different, just because it's been kind of that way for however long we've had a Data Squad and all that. So it's like it's a little weird to try and argue it now. But I mean, I understand people don't like the name; they would rather have Yggdrasil. But it's just one of those things. There's not much you can do about it. What are you gonna do? Cry and then pray they change the name?
Yeah, I mean, Yggdrasil makes a little bit more sense because the 76 is the form of Yggdrasil that he's taking. Yggdrasil does have different form changes depending on the body that he's interpreting and taking over. So, like, we see Yggdrasil as a sphere in X Evolution, the movie. So, like, the card's name sounds awkward, still being King Drazel X form versus Yggdrasil X form. It's a little bit more clunky and cumbersome, especially when we get to some of the other forms where they actually could have like proper names or like different style of names. So it's just a weird thing, but it's not the first time they've done that, considering we have Burning Greymon when in Japan it's Vitramon, and
Exactly.
yeah. At least it's not actually impacting gameplay this time around. It's just a little awkward and clunky and cumbersome. And, like, I really wish Digimon just had a grasp on their translations, because this extends to more than just the card games, the video games as well. Like, they swap between Omnimon and Omegamon all the time. They can't seem to lock down what they want to use for what and when in terms of their translations. And, like, that's the biggest complaint that I have, or, like, one of the biggest complaints. Censorship aside, because, like, that's just whatever. As much as I don't like it, again, nothing I can really do about it. But translations, they could do a better job on that.
Yeah, that's something that can be fixed, and quite easily. But they just, I don't know if they really will put the effort to do so. But
I know they won't. I know they won't.
It would be cool, but I'm gonna go ahead and make the assumption they're just not going to.
But hey, outside of that, I'm glad we don't actually have any translation issues with the set so far.
We've seen, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so definitely a step in the right direction from the EX3 debacle. But that's because, like, the Japanese version decided to use a Japanese character, which is harder to represent and translate into English. Like, we managed to do it, but the fact that, like, it was just an awkward, like, localization thing, realistically was just like, why? Just why? What are they doing?
They probably just were getting lazy and were trying to just push it forward, or they weren't really thinking about it. One or the other.
Sure.
So,
But yeah.
we should be all good, though. I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption we're good in terms of the set.
Yeah, like, there's not really that many things for them to screw up, hopefully. I say hopefully. They could still screw up, like, out of nowhere for no reason, so, but it definitely seems like as long as they stay away from, like, those weird, awkward translations, we should be fine going forward. Nothing too crazy. But as far as, like, things going crazy, I know that the pre-release is coming up. I recently put out my pre-release guide on top of my set review, so if you want, you could watch some of those. But the one thing I forgot to mention in my pre-release guide, which I probably should have, is the fact that I mentioned the different metas and the different playstyles based on the cards in the set, But I totally forgot to say what's actually good in the set in terms of the playstyle. If you're going into BT13's pre-release expecting to play Rookie Rush, do not. I will warn you, do not play Rookie Rush in this set. There are so many blockers and defensive tools, because like I alluded to saying that in my video, but I didn't actually just say it. Do not play Rookie Rush in this set. You will have a very bad time.
If you want a fast track to lose, you can play Rookie Rush. If you want to play Rookie Rush against me during pre-release, that'd be cool too. But I promise you, your deck will get eaten alive in this format. There are so many big blockers in this format.
Like I'm curious. I want to count. So the amount of cards that say blocker on them. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. You have like 21 cards. That's like almost a fifth of the set that have or say the blocker ability on it to just stop some of the opponent's aggression. Like, that's a lot.
It's too much for you to even think about trying it.
So my personal recommendation is to play a stack-based deck and just kind of like tempo your way into a big body that's hard for the opponent to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I lean. Just find cards that have just very high impact effects out the gate rather than... or just get inheritables that can somewhat synergize together. Because of course you're not going to get perfect synergies with that. That's just not how this works. But there are ways to mix things, especially since the color format, you don't have to worry about color. You're able to just mix things to make some interesting, very, very interesting lines. So finding just those very high impact lines is just very important.
Yeah. If you had to pick one card you would want to play in sealed, actually I'll be generous. What are 3 cards you would just immediately want in sealed, like in the pre-release environment? I'm curious on what your answers would be, because this goes into just card analysis on like what are you valuing in terms of what you're looking for versus what I'm looking for and what I value. So top 3 sealed cards, go. They could be secrets and supers if you really wanted to, even though the likelihood of seeing them is like a lot less.
I was like, the only secret I would immediately put would be Gallimon, just because he's just generically good. Especially in a format like this where you just have to have cards in trash from both players' trash, which is nuts. Like, this is... if you play a deck that revolves around destroying or deleting things and then trying to stack that up, you could even just play like a lot of the purple stuff and then make it so that Gallimon, if you do end up pulling one, you use him as a closer to knock things out. He's definitely a big one. I would think in terms of if you did pull him, he would definitely be really, really good to use just as an individual boss monster. If I had to go by... I mean, definitely the Tamer. Probably Marcus is one of those. One of the memory setters is definitely big, but I feel like Marcus is probably the best of them. Just not even for the fact that the Greymon effect or anything like that. If you have it, cool, but that's not even necessary. That's just a win more type thing. But the extra just removal with 3,000 on top of a memory setter that comes on play, that's pretty solid. So I think boss monster, Gallant, memory setter. You can kind of lump all the memory setters, but I think Marcus is definitely the better of them all. At least looking at the batch here. And then supporting cards. I almost want to just say there's a lot of blockers, so I just want to say anything that can just bypass them, or you lean into the blocking yourself. It's kind of one or two of those scenarios, because I think there's a lot of strong blockers. Like this card, this guy Jumbo Gamamon. This card is pretty nuts. Like he just plays a level 5 or lower from his sources. When
Yeah, actually, that was going to be one of my
great,
three
like
highlight cards. Like, if you see Jumbo Gamemon, take
think you
like you
should.
want to play him, even though he's like high evolution cost.
He
The fact
plays
that he has
so
13k DP matters, blocker matters, and playing an extra body for free matters. And I don't think it's even color restricted. No, it is not. So you
it's
could
not.
actually play any card from his sources for this type of environment. And the fact that he's an uncommon means there's a high likelihood you're going to see him.
Yeah, very likely you might even get more than one. And if you get more than one, you're sitting pretty.
Yeah. As far as so you chose by kind of like level, I'm gonna choose by rarity. So the like a highlight rare that I want to point out is going to be Examon. I know it's another mega, but Examon, the fact that he is the only card in the deck to have DNA actually does kind of matter. The fact that he is a level 7 does also matter. It allows you to be able to get over some other things that you might not be able to otherwise. And I think he's just like a really solid card at just trying to be aggressive or defensive, depending on how your build goes. And especially since the fact that we could ignore Digivolution color requirements for DNAs means that any 2 level 6s you get on the field, you could DNA into an Examon. So you could just get some extra pressure out of nowhere for free. And that's just insane.
Yeah, suspend one of the guys. They don't unsuspend, which means out of nowhere you can start clearing bodies. And when an opponent's Digimon comes unsuspended, you could suspend another one of their Digimon, and then or unsuspend yourself. Like that's pretty nutty.
Yeah, and then my common of choice is actually going to be a really interesting one. I had 2 in mind. I was initially thinking about Gladimon just because both of the keywords are just good. Him natively having jamming is good, and then him giving reboot is good. But a lot of the Chessmon cards also can give reboot, so I wasn't super high on actually like picking Gladimon. So the card that I'm actually going to be picking is going to be Platinum Sukamon. People like, yes, he is poop. Yes, his abilities are borderline useless for the entirety of the deck. Like the on delete Digivolve is actually kind of annoying and still could matter. The inheritable doesn't matter at all, but the fact that he is the cheapest level 4 in the set to hard play, I think that's very relevant, especially if you're trying to build a second stack as quickly as you possibly can. You could just be like, okay, level 3 in raising, hard play Sukamon, and then you could just then Digivolve into a level 5 and start being able to put the pressure and aggression on as early as you possibly can. He's just a really solid card in general for the limited environment, even though his inheritable doesn't do anything. Because one of the things that I touched on in my video is like picking cards because of their stats and their efficiencies. Having a level 4 that hard plays for 3 is actually still pretty good.
I hard agree. I think that card is very good. I think one card I didn't mention, I'll just throw an honorable mention, is the Craniamon option, Waltz End. I think that card is quite absurd in a format like this.
There is a decent amount of black, so using black and yellow options isn't like the hardest thing in the world to do compared to some of the other ones. Because I usually find options to be kind of hit and miss depending on like where the set is, but because there is a lot of 2-color black cards, I think those types, that and the Kintaros option, are actually going to be pretty good options to pick from.
Yeah, because that Waltz End is crazy, dude. Just come suspended, delete all of your opponent's Digimon with play class equal to or less than. So, like, wall time to one of that will just absolutely destroy an opponent.
My honorable mention is probably going to be Kintoro Spawn. Just because
That card is
I think
crazy.
Kintoro Spawn is just like one of the better generically good SRs to just use. He doesn't require any specific synergies, and like he could just help you win games, while also having again stats matter, some pretty high stats.
Yeah, I think Kentoris one is like low key, like really well statted.
Because I don't think there's a whole lot of like DP boosting. I know there's some, but not a whole lot. And what is there, I think, is like literally limited to Alphamon.
Yeah, the X antibody stuff, and then everything else kind of there really
I
isn't
mean, you have
too
some
much.
eggs. You have some eggs that can DP boost, but yeah, there actually just isn't a whole lot of DP boosting in the set. So like, your stats
And
actually will
Goromon,
matter a little bit more when it comes to sealed and limited.
and Goromon does technically.
Yeah, there's some, but it's far and few between. It's
And
not
it's
like it's
limited.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's very limited on what you can do. Like this one, the Angoromon line, while your opponent has no unsuspended Digimon, this Digimon gets 1k DP. So it's like they have to have stuff that's not suspended.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good cards for obviously both constructed and for sealed and limited for pre-release. But yeah, it's gonna. I don't know if you're gonna be going to a whole lot of pre-releases. I might go to two. I'm going to one by default. How many are you thinking about attending?
Probably two.
Two.
Yes, probably two. I
I
don't
just
know if I'll go more. Maybe.
I need to
Maybe.
find a way to get more SP mons. I might. I hope the card's not going to be super expensive.
I doubt it will be. I don't think anyone's really gonna play it.
I think with the hype and popularity that the set has, because this is like even more hype than BT12, and BT12 having all the protagonists was already a pretty hype thing. But I
This
think
guy
just the
all
theme
the
of the
Royal
Royal Knights is
Knights,
just
man.
more hype.
Yeah, the Royal Knights, the alt arts for them are gorgeous. Like there's a lot in this set. The Savers being a very popular season. I mean, there's a lot to this set, so I'm excited. A lot of stuff that gets fleshed out. There's a lot of sub archetypes that are actually just not bad. Like they're just not, the main archetypes to play, but they're still not bad at all. Like the Kentorosmon deck is gonna be pretty cool. There's a bunch of Leomon in this set, isn't there? Yeah, there is. It's yellow though.
Yeah, he plays around with the Kentaro stuff. I was thinking about like, oh, maybe the EX1 Leomon might be a cute card to throw in just for flavor, but I already know like using BT6 Wizardmon or something like that is obviously just better.
Yeah, looks like it. I was kind of hoping he would just evolve off of a Leomon for 3 as well. Or, like a Grap Leomon or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
After seeing him, that would have been really cool. I would like that a lot. If he did just evolve off of any Digimon with Leomon in its name at levels 5 at least.
Like him, like the Leomon. Leomon's obviously one of my favorite evolution lines, and Bancho's one of my favorite megas. So like seeing them kind of like do him a dirty and making him yellow. Like I get it; it's supposed to interact with Kentorosmon because Spencer is the director's friend and whatnot in the show, and they're taking a lot of like again lore inspirations for some of their card effects. But at the same time, like I wish they would have just had special Digivolution conditions to make it more in line with Leomon. So, like, even though you're adding another color to what Leomon can do, it would have just helped be able to give the deck more tools to actually be a deck.
I kind of was hoping. I remember way long ago when we saw the spoilers, like for Japan, and I saw Loader Leomon, and I was kind of hoping that Heavy Leomon would come out more so than Boncho, but then the Tamer showed up, and I was like, well, that's Boncho.
Don't worry, EX5, Heavy Leomon. Not confirmed, but that would be dope.
That would be pretty cool, man. I would be pretty happy with a green yellow Loader Leomon or something like that.
Yeah, but I think like this set as a whole, like there's just a lot of like good stuff. Just because like the way I look at a good set is like what each of the cards are doing and how much applications each of the cards have. And the fact that a lot of the Royal Knights not only just work with their own deck and their own line, but they also work with the Yggdrasil deck as well just adds different levels of playability that just really makes the designer in my head super happy to see them do, because the cross synergy and cross deck support sometimes can be a little bit hard and cumbersome to do. And the fact that I feel like with Yggdrasil, they're doing it very tastefully, very tactfully, and correctly just makes me smile at the fact that, like, here's some just solid design. Like, even though the deck is looking to be pretty strong, not gonna lie, it has a lot of good toolboxing. I don't think it's an unbeatable deck. And I don't think the Marcus... Yeah, and I don't think the Marcus deck is going to be as unbeatable as people think. And everyone's already anticipating bans and limits, as we already mentioned in previous episodes, with Ultimate Cup shedding some light on they might be looking at it. But right now, that's just hyperbole based on circumstantial evidence. So causation doesn't actually mean correlation, and vice versa.
Yeah. So I mean that, but we'll see. We'll see when we get to that point. I don't think they'll be doing anything anytime soon, but we'll see.
I mean, if they would have made the announcement, they would have made it by now.
Exactly.
I don't think that they're going to be saving. Like, they're probably going to have another announcement probably in August, if I had to take a guess. Not necessarily because in August we get RB1, which is the reprint set that has the Ghost Game cards, but because, like, that is the next wave of like downtime for competitive events, like in terms of like actual competitive Digimon, not just Ultimate Cup. So, like, they can make the change for Ultimate Cup, but, like, Ultimate Cup might be their testing grounds, and they might just wait till Ultimate Cups are done, which is where, like, August kind of fits, is like, okay, most of them are going to be starting or finishing in August. So, like, post-August or just that late August seems like it would be the best time if they want to hit something, to hit something. Not saying they are.
Yeah, this is purely speculation. So we are just making assumptions, but there's no real way, rhyme, or reason as to why. So hopefully we'll get some information going down. I kind of don't want them to, but I assume they will.
It really just depends on how Japan feels. Like, if Japan's meta becomes unhealthy for EX5, I think that's probably their tells that something is going to get hit. I don't necessarily see anything getting hit as of BT14, but as of EX5, that would make more sense to hit something, because going, like, into EX5, if, like, still, even though EX sets are lower power and not as meta defining, like, there's still stuff that they want to try to push and fix, and I feel like a little bit into EX5 for Japan might be the good opportunity to try to take a look and be like, okay, something probably needs to get fixed here, because not saying, like, looking at Japanese data right now, BT13 is still just the hot set right now. Where a lot of the meta decks in Japan are from BT13. So, like, going over some of their best decks right now in their BT14 environment, you have Shine Greymon, Mirage Gaugamon, Bloom Lord, or Plants and Fairies, so the Blossomon stuff, or not Blossomon,
The
Rosemon. Yeah, Rosemon falls into that. Then you have Sons of Chaos, which is the Dark Animal deck using Lugamon, and you have Black War Greymon, or Red Black Greymon. So out of the top 5 decks, 4 of them are from BT13. So it's like, there needs to be more time, obviously, for BT14 to grow as a format, because it literally just started. But it's kind of showing that, like, BT13 is, like, the new hotness. And it's not necessarily where the power creep is, it's just where the attention is.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm interested. I hope it'll be a good time. So it should be a fun time. I mean, the only thing I can think of is them messing with the Greymon stuff, but that's...
I think Red Black Greymon's definitely has some huge problems.
Yeah. That's the only stuff I could see them messing with currently. And that's just solely due to it just never going away as a deck. Like, they just, like,
I
every
mean,
set.
that's the cool part though, is they can hit whatever they want from it and it'll still be a
Yeah.
deck.
Yep, they'll
So
still rotate to something else. They'll just switch what they have, and then they'll do a different,
like that's both the
different.
problem and the solution at the same time because of how supported it is. But speaking of support, I know that a lot of people are going to be already predicting and estimating that the Shine Greymon deck, getting its third wave of support, starting from BT12, continuing in EX4, finishing in BT13. That's going to make the deck really, really scary and dangerous with all of the new cards. I definitely think it's positioned to be a good meta contender deck. And Mirage Gao is also following that same pattern. Started in BT11, continued in EX4, finished in BT13. As we see, or as I just mentioned with the Japanese data, it's definitely positioned to be one of the better decks of the formats.
I think it'll still be a little hard to play it without the training cards. The
I
training cards definitely give it a massive boost.
I think so too. Um, the Shine stuff obviously doesn't need the training cards as
Yeah.
much as the Gao stuff, just because like the tempo and the consistency that the training cards offers, which we are getting in BT13 by the way, or BT14 by the way.
Yep.
So it just means like BT14 we get Mirage at full power. Doesn't mean the deck is unplayable now. It's still positioned
No.
to be one of the best blue decks by
Correct.
far.
I think it might just be the best blue deck.
I'll definitely be messing around with it just because I usually like how blue decks play, and he seems very fun and interesting.
I mean, you know me.
So outside of the obvious, which is Shine, Mirage, Belframon, and Royal Knights, what are some like lesser known decks that you think would be really fun and interesting coming out of the set?
I think no one's talking about it, but I think the Jesmon support coming out in this set is actually low-key crazy good.
Oh yeah, because doesn't it let you just like turbo faster into your Jesmons?
Yeah, it does the one thing that Jesmon has a massive problem with, excluding consistency, which is kind of circumvented with the sister mods, but it lowers the cost of your evolutions by a lot. So, like, for example, the level 3 allows you to evolve into the level 4 for free when a sister mon is played, and then the level 4 does the same thing, but to the level 5, but for 1 cost, and then the level 6 does the same thing, or the level 5 goes into the level 6 for 2 cost less. So, it's, while also, like, and they all, like, for example, like, if you have the level 4 under the level 5 and you play a Sistermon, you effectively go into your Jesmon for 3 costs less because you'll gain a memory back. But if you also have the level 3, then you go into a Jesmon for 4 costs less. So, like, going into those, like, the Blitz Jesmon turns into a free Evo, basically. Like, it's pretty absurd how good I think this stuff is. And then the new Gankumon also really, really, really does a good job of like making it so that your guys can't be messed with. This like it's super super good. Like I'm very excited. I mean, I'm gonna probably end up putting it together. I mean, I have the deck put together, but I can't wait to update it.
Yeah,
With this,
I think my sleeper hit is actually going to be Alphamon. Kind of going into the same type of like logic that you were going into. I just think like Alphamon was already really good, and we just
need another
didn't
level
want
5.
to use him because of the Doru Gray hit more than the actual strength of the deck itself. And I think just because now we actually have another Doru Gray card, we get to use all of the broken tools that we were using before. So we get to extra capitalize on Cool Boy. The new Doru Gray still has some protection. It forces us to want to run the X antibody option a little bit more than what we used to in the past, but that's not that big of a deal. So, like, it just unlocks the deck's potential again, especially since the new Alphamon is also a pretty decent disruption tool in of himself.
Ooh, that card is crazy, dude. Like the new
Yeah.
Alpha one is like borderline a lockdown. Like,
Which is good because the deck still wants to be like the alpha or you can like combo-y style deck, and
mm,
like this just for it helps not only stall the opponent out, so you could try to find your parts and pieces, but it's still just a solid standalone card too, and like the protection that it also has is just really really good, and I feel like the better the protections, the better a deck can perform. So it has just a lot of ability to be able to protect and maintain itself, which, as we've seen with Machine Dramon and Greymon and some of the other decks with high levels of protection, it just makes them very annoying to deal with, and their Digimon are just going to stick. So even though the rest of the line outside of the Doru Gray and the Alphamon aren't really doing anything super spicy, they're just DP boosters. You don't even have to run them if you don't want to. So, but the fact that now we have another Dorugamon means that we could run a full line of Darugamons and Dex Darugamon. So it just helps with the consistency of being able to utilize your cards to their utmost potential, which is pretty good.
that Dora Gray is really solid.
No, even though he doesn't add security attack plus to be able to make the deck go like completely unga bunga, I saw a lot of people teching in the promo Sunarizamon to be able to have that security attack plus, and then you get the extra ability from the Doru Greymon here as well to just be able to do some good stuff. Yeah,
Like, that shit's so good. That card is like low key crazy. And it helps you refill for maybe another, or you can play like if you do get Digivolved or anything like that. Like there's a lot of applications for the card, the Doru Gray card, which I like a lot.
yeah, I saw some like really interesting tech out of Japan utilizing the new Alphamon cards, just because like we also forget that Death Exmon was supposed to have his own deck, and I saw some really interesting and funny stuff with that on being able to stack multiple level 6s underneath your Digimon, and then going into Omnimon Alter B and using Omnimon Alter B's ability, because you're just going to be hard playing Death Exmon off of Dexterugoramon, his ability anyway. So you're not actually digivolving into your level 7, so it gives you the availability to still play a level 7 to use.
Yeah, I think that this if funny if I didn't say Jessmon, this was probably the second deck I was going to put up, because I think Alphamon is like has a very very good chance of being very strong.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like dud cards in the and like dud decks in the set, but that's like to be expected. Like I don't think Poop is gonna get any better. I don't think Chessmon as a deck is gonna be good. Like they're good budget decks, don't get me wrong. Like but even more budget friendly than your average budget deck. But in terms of like meta, they're not really looking to try to be meta. I think like Leopardmon's pretty cute of a deck just because he's trying to interact with like Beasts, which we know is going to get support in EX4.
Yeah,
or not EX4, EX5. My bad.
Yeah, EX5. I think the Leopardmon deck is solid too. Like the full idea, like the line is very efficient. On top of being flooding the board and being super aggressive, I like it. I just don't know. I feel like it's too much setup, but too much setup for this kind of format. I think when you just need to be explosive, you need to win like out the gate, not over a long period of time, unless you could stall. But I don't think this deck has the means to stall them out.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's like gonna be as good as the Ravemon deck. Like they're definitely like rogue tier, probably at best, maybe tier 3. But
yeah,
like I just think like the Ravemon deck, while I do love what it's trying to do, and like this set does basically help complete the deck, it's still kind of not super impactful enough to really warrant being meta playable. Like obviously the burst modes are supposed to be like super combo-y wombo-y cards because they basically digivolve themselves after you use their burst. But when it comes to the other burst modes that Mirage and Shine have, it really shows like the true combo potential that these decks could have because of the burst mode, and Ravemon and unfortunately Rosemon just really aren't kind of hitting those same notes. I think Rosemon is definitely better because, Bloomlord's
Oh yeah.
already a good deck, but I don't know if Bloomlord's going to adopt a whole lot of Rosemon stuff outside of Lalamon as just another searcher and Yoshino as a possible budget option to Mimi if they don't have Mimi.
Yeah, I think it's more so the opposite, where Rosemon will take some of the Bloomlord stuff and use it rather than Bloomlord use the Rosemon stuff. Just because the Rosemon stuff is kind of shoehorned into its own thing.
Yeah, it cares about the opponent's cards being suspended more than suspending your own cards. So there is a slight clash in mechanics. Bloomlord does have ways of suspending the opponent's stuff down, but that's not the focus of the deck.
Yeah, they're not they're not too counterintuitive, but they are counterproductive to each other. But they're doing a little bit different things. So I think more so the like the Rosemont will take stuff from Bloomlord than the opposite. But I mean that's fine. Bloomlord doesn't really need this stuff. Like the searchers is probably the only thing it really cares about. Just more consistency. That's like the only thing Bloomlord really had a problem with.
Yeah, and Lalamon definitely helps with the consistency while fitting on theme. And like I said, Yoshino, for those who don't have access to Mimi, is actually still pretty good. Like, the deck's already super memory efficient, and the fact that Yoshino can make them more memory efficient is kind of ridiculous. Even though I do think Mimi is just better, but that's why Mimi is a pretty expensive card.
Yeah, I mean it won't ever not be
Yeah.
like because it's just a good card in any green deck whatsoever.
Yeah, and then I know you're excited for Gallantmon, obviously, even though it is a one-card update. The fact that Royal Knights uses him, Gallantmon uses him, and Chaos Gallantmon also wants to use him, like, just make him a super appealing card, and, like, it definitely helps propel the Gallantmon deck to be more where it is trying to be.
Oh, I'm so excited, dude. A rush body that I can just slam at the end of the game, nuke a big guy, evolve into Crimson mode. It just opens up lines for ways to win the game. That's all it is. Like more opportunities to win the game, which is exactly what the deck needs. It also just needs protection, some way to keep itself alive, but I mean, we won't probably be seeing any of that, but that's okay. I'll take what I can get.
I mean,
So,
damage out of nowhere is already what makes decks like Dorbic OTK and blue flares and by extension red flares already really, really powerful. And just again, that's kind of what makes hunters and other cross-based decks like really strong is the fact that the damage just can actually come out of nowhere. There's no real good way to play around it outside of floodgates, and Gallantmon's not afraid of deleting floodgates. Good luck having floodgates to begin with against Gallantmon. But
yeah.
I think like just that prospect already can just turn something not hyper competitive into something more competitive. I think it is a good upgrade to Gallantmon as a whole. And it's not like Gallantmon was that bad to begin with. He was just a little on the slower side, and the lack of protection definitely didn't help the deck. And then the inconsistencies on its names and what synergies it's trying to work with also is another like drawback for the deck unlocking its true potential. So I think like literally we're one line away from Gallantmon being like actually really, really good. Like more so than he already is.
Yeah, because he's not. It's still not bad per se. The deck is not bad at all. It just is just slow. That's really the only thing that I could say about the deck. And some of the stuff is kind of counterproductive. Like you either are leaning towards milling and then trying to trash that way, or you're leaning towards just pure control. And there's kind of three different ways to play it, and neither of them are wrong per se. It's just not. They all kind of clash together. But I think this is a good way to focus the deck, like things like this card, where now I can, okay, the goal is to do one or the other. Either I can hurt myself by milling myself a bunch, and then now I can meet the requirements to have the cheap play for the Gallantmon, or I can do a bit of both, where I mill both of us, focus a little bit, not too much, and then control the board, and then now I can meet the condition that way, or just focus purely on control, kill their stuff, try and get their stuff to be as filled as much as possible. I kind of like it a lot. I think it gives focus to all of the styles. And if you wanted to focus on one or the other.
Yeah, speaking of focus, I also kind of like the Magnamon card. Because, like, out of all of the cards, it's kind of funny that Magnamon supports his deck more than he supports the Royal Knights deck. Even though just, like, the effect of just drawing a card when he leaves play is, and just natively having blocker, on top of being a cheap Royal Knight, is what makes it appealing for the Royal Knights deck to use to begin with. But the fact that even though it doesn't have Armor Purge, it basically has Armor Purge. Letting you play the VMon means you could get its on-play effect. There's already a lot of good VMon searchers. And, like, between yellow and blue, we have 3 different sets of Armor Digimon that we could use. So I think, like, yellow-blue armor is definitely in a really good position to actually make a huge comeback solely because of Magnamon versus his other Royal Knight counterpart, Allforce Veedramon. I don't necessarily think this is going to be that useful of a card for the Allforce deck. It gives him a different tool, but it's a tool that he's not actually looking to use. What I didn't know about it going into my review is I totally, like, forgot to mention that the Jellymon line's mega for the set actually is the Ulforce, which was pretty funny, and I didn't realize that was the same thing with Leopardmon and the Angora stuff. So, like, that's kind of why it feels, like, really weird on the Jellymon's abilities, is because it wanted to interact with the Ulforce inside of the set. And I think that might be a move more so for Constructed, because the Jellymon more specifically isn't interacting with the themes that all of the old Jellymons and the RB1 Jellymon, which, correction, it is coming in September, not August. So the fact that, like, it just gives Jellymon some interesting tools, but I think, like, the level 5s is obviously the highlight if you're looking to start to, like, build into Jellymon or Angoramon. And I think we're just waiting for the RB set Rising Winds to be able to complete those decks. But it's nice to see that they have some interesting tech and tools.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, the Jellymon stuff and then the Angoramon stuff are in this set, but then there's no Gamamon stuff.
It's because he's supposed to be in RB1 because he gets a lot more love in RB1 than the others. Like, we're realistically just missing the megas at this point, which I already pointed out in terms of, like, inside of the set. Allforce is supposed to be Jellymon's mega, and then Leopardmon is also supposed to be Angoramon's mega, but that doesn't mean that we're going to want to use them in their respective decks.
Yeah, exactly. So very interesting to see. I'm excited to play with it, especially the Jellymon stuff. The Jellymon stuff is pretty cool. I like what it's doing, and not necessarily too much with Angoramon. I mean, the deck does look pretty cool, but
don't tell everyone the secret that Jellymon actually hard counters Marcus. Like, yeah, not this Jellymon. When we get to Rising Winds, the reprint set, that Jellymon is, like, that Jellymon tech is the secret to being able to beat Marcus, because Jellymon is one of the few decks that is actually able to bounce Tamers. So it actually does have Tamer removal, which is kind of why Mirage is in a really good spot, because his new level 6, even though he is going to be the supporting level 6, the fact that he still just bounces Tamers is super relevant in this format, with a whole lot of Tamer-based decks still being some of the better decks.
Yeah, I think it's super, super valid, and I think it's important that people understand that, because it's very, very good. Um, especially right now with like being able to stop Marcus. Like if they only have the one level 5 to play the Marcus, then you bouncing the Marcus automatically turns them off, or they have to play another turn where they have to play the Marcus out and then waste a turn doing that, which is enough to stop a game literally and put it in your favor.
Yeah. But I think that's like a good generalization on like our hype for this set. We only just scratched the surface, and as time goes on, we're going to be getting a good amount of data. Because as I mentioned before, Rising Winds RB1, that set is going to be coming out in September. So we do have some time with that. And if we take a look at a lot of the Japanese data, they had Rising Winds before BT13, and looking at their BT13 data, which would be akin to our Rising Winds meta, Rising Winds isn't necessarily the most impactful in terms of the meta relevancy. Gamamon's pretty cute. I already mentioned Jellymon's really good at countering Marcus, but it still has some of it, like issues keeping it from being super hyper competitive. But like it's definitely going to be a really interesting meta, because this is the meta that we're going to be going into for a while, because the next big line main set is going to be BT14, which Japan is just entering right now. So we're going to be stuck in BT13 for quite a while, and I'm actually looking forward to the change. I already have mentioned this before. I don't like the BT12 meta. I'm just super excited to move on from it. And I hope that the amount of like deck diversity and the healthiness of the meta is definitely going to come through, just because of all of the different new decks on top of the decks that we currently have, on top of the decks that we're upgrading to make playable. And the secondary market is behaving as such, reflecting where some of the hype is. So having some like read on what people are interested in based on the secondary market could give you a little bit of an advantage on just figuring out what you want, how to get it as cheap as you possibly can, and what people are playing with. So that way you could try to best prepare a deck to be able to counter what people are playing with, whether it's going to be inside of the set or something that we already have.
Yeah, this should be an interesting time frame. We're getting into a good set, a very very good set to play with. There's a bunch of decks that are going to be able to be competitively viable. So both in the budget and the non-budget friendly. But Digimon is a pretty budget-friendly game anyway, so I don't think that'll be a problem too much.
If anything, this set seems like it's going to actually make the game cheaper, just because like a lot of hype is around it. So the set's going to be opened en masse, and then because of all of the updates, like it could help drop the price of certain decks like Examon. I know the secret rare Examon was like something that kept a lot of people away and off the deck, but now we have a budget version. So like now you could start using this card instead of the other one, even though the other one's better. It just makes the game more accessible this way, which is something like I don't necessarily see a whole lot of the conversation around, is like, oh, how do you make decks like cheaper? And this is one way to make decks cheaper, having a good alternative that allows you to still play the entirety of the deck as is. You just don't need the most expensive card because we have, well, a good alternative.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in a good time. I think Digimon right now is in a good spot. There's a lot of cool things happening, and I think it's going to be just a fun time going forward. So I am very, very, very excited for this coming time frame, and it's going to be a good time. So
yeah, I'm interested to hear next time how your pre-releases go. Usually I do a pre-release report, but depending on how many I play, I might have more to talk about. It all depends on how well I do in Carta Magica. I hope I do well to where I don't need to drop to go to a pre-release, but I at least have that option available to me to continue to play Digimon.
that's true. I am very excited. This pre-release is going to be a good time. Very, very excited to play.
Yep, and on that note, I want to thank everyone for making it to the end and listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please help support the podcast by not only sharing it on various social media platforms, but also leaving a follow, subscribe, whatever way that you have to keep up with the podcast as it's coming out, depending on your platform of choice. And don't forget to leave a rating and review. That also helps as well. And I want to thank everyone again for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.